let's get into human sexuality. Always popular among us humans, among life in general. So, what is promiscuity, and how does it function within the male and the female specialized reproductive role? So both are promiscuous to one degree or another, and in different contexts with different rhythms. And this is because of some natural factors. For instance, a male's promiscuity is dependent on opportunity, which is also determined by its attractiveness, its fitness, the male's fitness. And the second factor is sperm production. A male produces billions of sperm per day, and this determines its promiscuity. And we see this in all primates. We see this in chimpanzees, which are more promiscuous, and their testicles, relative to their physical size, are much greater than a human's or a Homo sapiens. So sperm production contributes to a male's promiscuity. On the female side, a female is born with a finite amount of ova. That means this affects her promiscuity. She must be more careful how and with whom she has sex with, and with whom she is impregnated by, because she does not produce infinite amount of ova like the male produces sperm. The male's role is based on impregnating as many females in its lifetime as it can, and this is restricted only in humans and in other primates by the alpha male, the dominant male, and in humans by the social system, its rules, its morals, its ideals. This is why ideology is so crucial among humans. So a female is also restricted naturally by what? By her impregnation. That makes her dependent upon the group for long periods of time. Her survival is more dependent upon the group than a male's is. This is why females are more inclined to be defenders of the status quo, or the powers that be, or tolerance, and anything that ensures that a stable environment, because her natural role, her reproductive role, is more dependent on the group, and therefore social ties, social rules, social relationships are so crucial to a female, because that's her reproductive role, because her pregnancy imposes this dependence. And you can see this in her form, her musculature, her skeletal structure, the shape of her. It all screams dependence. And this is why paternalism had to set a limit on female promiscuity in order to, like I've said before, to assimilate as many males into the system as possible, to prevent male competition, which is disruptive to the cohesion of the group. But human meddling, especially male meddling, because a male must always challenge the status quo, and this is what fucks him up, gets him into trouble. In this case, he made himself obsolete. Well, how did he do that? He invented rules that protected female promiscuity. He invented technologies that allowed females to overcome nature's limits on female promiscuity. Like I said, female promiscuity is a powerful method, a strategy, a tool. She can use sex to exploit and manipulate within social contexts. But nature sets limits to this power. She gets pregnant. She is dependent during her pregnancy. Her frame is shaped and is more vulnerable, more fragile than a male's. She's not as strong. She's not as fast. That means she's more dependent on the group for her survival. And she's also dependent on the group for her reproductive role. This is how nature sets limits. But humans, males, they invent things. They come up with ideals such as emancipation, such as equality. They invent technologies that allow females to overcome these natural limits to their promiscuity. They invent contraceptives. They invent day after pills. They invent rules protecting female sexual expression and inhibit male sexual expression, which is ironic, isn't it? Males invent abortions, safe abortions. And all this allows females to do what? To no longer be limited by nature's limitations. And this is part of the feminization of man, because now men must adapt to this newfound power, this empowerment that females have acquired through male interventions, innovations, mind you. This is what's ironic about this thing. Males make themselves obsolete by empowering women through these technologies, these innovations, by liberating females from nature's limitations. They force males to adapt to this female empowerment. By protecting females from male superiority, physical and mental, they allow females to express, to be empowered, and they inhibit the counter to this female power, the male power, which I'm not going to mention because it's going to be controversial, and I still cannot freely speak my mind, especially not on YouTube. So what is the consequence? Feminization of man. Males are now forced to adapt to this new socially imposed environment. So since it favors feminine sexuality, they are forced to adapt and adopt feminine methods of sexual gratification, of attracting the opposite sex. In some ways, this new thing, this increase in homosexuality and transsexuality, is how inferior males have chosen to adapt to this new set of circumstances. Since they can't compete with other males, they choose to become females because they intuitively, if not consciously, they subconsciously recognize that females are favored. They are preferred by the system because they're more malleable. So if you can't beat them, you have to join them. So why not become a female? Why not claim you are a female and then gain the advantages the system provides for you? This is part of what happens when human beings, especially males, intervene with their own beliefs, their own preferences, their own ideals of what they think will be better upon natural processes. And then this has collateral effects that they did not foresee. And this is evident now because the collateral effects are demographic. Sure, you can liberate females and force males to behave and to think more like females, but this has an impact on demographics, and this in turn has an impact on how society can compete with other societies that have not become enthralled, dominated, indoctrinated by this nihilistic doctrine. The cost is the survival of the entire group, which can no longer sustain itself. So it's not that females are less promiscuous than males. If anything, they are more so. But that their cycle is not as fast as a male's, because a male produces sperm by the billions, whereas a female is born with a finite amount of ova. So her promiscuity follows the 7-year cycle, which is the amount of years required for a human offspring to reach an age of self-dependence, of independence. That's why we hear about the 7-year itch. That's the length of female promiscuity, the cycle of female promiscuity. That's why most marriages, now that the females are liberated, last about between 5 and 8 years, somewhere around there, if there's not other factors involved. All this is a general commentary. Individually, there's other factors that contribute to these to divorce rates and all that stuff. Why a person divorces. Attractiveness, opportunity, indoctrination, culture, all these factors, psychology, individual psychology, and so on and so forth. But in general, 7 years is the length, and we see this in primates in the wild. This doesn't mean that a female during those 7 years is true to her mate. That is, a female may choose to pretend to be loyal to her mate for longer than 7 years. And in the meantime, she might be promiscuous in a clandestine manner. And I'm not saying that every man and every woman will cheat on their mate because they are promiscuous. Other factors are part of the equation, like opportunity, the attractiveness of the individual, which contributes to opportunity, his past experiences, his virtues versus his vices, his indoctrination, his upbringing, in other words, whether it's traditional or more modern, his inherited proclivities, such as his sexual needs determined by his inherited libido, his testosterone levels, his health, and all these things, his goals, his ambitions, his ideals. All these are factors, but in general, the human animal, I'm speaking about the base factor, the human animal impulse. A male will want to have sex with as many fertile, attractive females as possible, and a female will want to sperm sample, will want to diversify her investments, her egg investments, because nature is about flux, about changing environments, and this is why diversification of your resources, of your investments is so crucial, because you never know what's going to happen next. So you want to make sure that at least one of your offspring will have the traits required to survive. And this is why females also want to diversify their investments through their offspring. So this is why the sperm sample, as I call it crassly. And for this reason, paternalism set limits to both male, but primarily to female promiscuity, to female sexual impulses. And we could gauge these impulses by studying primates, especially chimpanzees in the wild, and how they behave, and how they use their sexuality, and with whom they copulate, how often, how many offspring they have with males, with the alpha males and with beta males. All these are is data that we can use to determine how females, how humans, males and females, will act if they were liberated from society, social rules and regulations. And in the West, when we speak of liberation, we always mean the liberation of the weak, in this case the female, from the powerful, the male dominance, male power. In other words, paternalism. So what we're experiencing right now is a return to primate behavior, sexual behaviors among females, but at the same time, where male sexual behavior is strictly regulated. And the effect of this is what I've called feminization of man. And we see this all around us if we have eyes, if we are objective enough to see what's occurring around us, why males are dropping out, why homosexual, paraphilia, transsexual rates are increasing, especially among males. Why creativity in the arts is decreasing when females are being promoted for the sake of equity, because without males the status quo is never challenged, and without that challenge you don't get innovation, you don't get humor, you don't get creativity. A female is good at maintaining, of nurturing what she is given, but she cannot innovate because it's not in her nature to challenge the status quo. It is in her nature to submit to what is powerful, and the status quo is often powerful. The only way a female would rebel against the status quo is if she is given an alternative that promises higher power. Power is what is attractive to a female. This is why in sex a male must be always maintain a level of intimidation relative to the female, mystique. And this idea of males showing their weaknesses is counter to the female's desire, because once a male shows his weakness, the female starts losing her sexual interest in the male, even though she, in her mind, she thinks that this is what a male should do because she's been indoctrinated. Her body reacts in antithesis to the ideology she's been indoctrinated within. So when a male shows weakness, she starts losing sexual interest in the male, and she doesn't know why, because a female is intuitive. She doesn't rationalize her intuition. She just submits to the feelings, her impulses. She doesn't understand why she loses interest in a male. But I'm telling you why, or I'm telling you a theory, and you can take it or leave it. I don't give a shit, actually. My theory is that once a male shows weakness, that is his mystique, his intimidation, he becomes less intimidating intellectually or physically to a female. Her sexual desire wanes, decreases. Even though she is told, and she repeats, that a male should show vulnerability, right? And all that nonsense, all those lies that we are given through the current ideology. Western, which is Americanism. I want to repeat it as often as I can. Americanism is liberalism. Americanism is globalism. There's no difference. Americanism is all these things. It's messianic, it's Abrahamic, it's nihilistic. And I've tried to explain the reasons why I think so. So in this case, the American ideology, which promotes supposed superficial diversity, diversity, but it's actually anti-diversity. It's pro-uniformity. And we can see this in the political system. There's not much diversity in the political system, but there is a lot of diversity on the supermarket shelves. That's the American system in a nutshell right there. Fashions, menu options, multiple. Genders, multiple. But actual diversity, like race, like sexual diversity, like sexual types, no. The American system is counter that. It's antithetical to this. It accepts no racial diversity, no biological. Anything biologically based, it rejects. Everything has to become abstract and superficial. So anyways, so when a female says that she wants the male to be sensitive and to share his fears and whatever, she's just repeating her indoctrination, because the female is always indoctrinated within whatever is prevalent, whatever is dominant during the time of her upbringing. Up to her teen years, I think, a female is shaped. And after that, she's settled. She's made her investments. She has her ideals. And then she becomes like I've said before, a filtering system. In nature, she's a genetic filtering. She filters out unfit genes. And when humans intervene, males intervene to create man-made environments based on man-made, which means male ideologies, preferences, some of which are nihilistic, the female becomes a mimetic filtering system. So she begins to filter out of the gene pool whatever the system considers anti-social, anti its ideal, contrary to its ideal. But this, of course, sets up the conflict between a female's natural impulses, which is inherited genetically, and her ideological, mimetic impulses, which she's been indoctrinated into since her birth. So this is the conflict between the meme and gene, or the mind-body dissonance, which I've often spoken about. This creates a sort of schizophrenia, where a human, not only a female, but a human in general, can say one thing and believe it. I'm not saying they're being deceptive, consciously deceptive, but they are being self-deceptive. They can say things that they believe is true, that they believe in, and yet act contrary to their own beliefs. This is why, at least in Christianity, which is another spiritual nihilistic dogma, they have the mythology of the primordial sin, and how Jesus came down to offer absolution from this contradiction. And in Christianity we have the confession, where those that are indoctrinated must go to the authority, in this case the priest, and ask for forgiveness because of how they've contradicted their own beliefs, because they can never live up to their own beliefs, because their own beliefs are nihilistic. No living being can ever abide by nihilistic ideals. because if they did, they would perish in a week. This is why even in Buddhism, the monks that go off supposedly to self-repress, to overcome their self, their identity, they are dependent on the community for their sustenance, for their protection, supposedly protecting them from wild animals as they meditate, and they are fed and watered as they practice their self-abnegating asceticism, which is different from Hellenic asceticism, which is a means, not an end. This is the difference between the nihilistic and the realistic, the nature-loving and the nature-hating dogmas. In Buddhism and in Judaism and in Christianity and Islam, asceticism is an end in itself. Self-negation, which no man, no living creature can ever adhere to, because that's suicidal. In Hellenism, asceticism is a means, just like exercise. It's a means of becoming stronger. And this corresponds to, in promiscuity, to the denial of sex in the nihilistic dogmas, memes, where the denial of human nature is at the core of its sexual control, whereas in realism, the limitation of promiscuity is not a denial of human nature. It is its sublimation. It acknowledges human nature, and this is why it must be controlled and must be redirected. So to convert it from something that is disruptive to something constructive. I believe Socrates called monogamy or marriage a technology in the truest sense of the word. From technique given logos, given a reason, given a language, a form of expression. And that's exactly what monogamy is for the human species. It is a technique for integrating as many males and females into the system, making them investors, and in this way stabilizing the system. Whereas now, what is occurring is males, primarily males, but also females. In the long term, a lot of females will also be excluded from the system, because a male can only fertilize, impregnate so many females, and the rest will be unable to become mothers, and this will make them uninvested in the system, along with the males, most of which are being excluded as we speak in the West, and this is having a demographic impact. They're excluded using technologies, using the females primarily, because females are now meme filtering, but their sexual energies are prevented from becoming too disruptive through technologies, and redirected so that they do not destroy the system itself through their competition. But this is having a long-term effect on the system, because not enough children are being born. So feminism has had an overall negative effect on society. Even though it sounds good, sounds fantastic in theory, right? Everybody should be free, nobody should intervene in what other people do in their bedrooms, live and let live, all that sounds fantastic. But in reality, it's not so. Because everything that happens in the world, everything somebody does in their bedroom, also affects us at some point in time. If not directly, then indirectly. So the destruction of the traditional family unit may benefit the system, but in the long run, it destroys it.